So they'll be calling you a radical. This is an important video. So I just got home from Idaho National Lab, meanwhile back on the ranch. So I knew about the dam being blown immediately, and I've waited to hear more details because it's that big of a deal. I think it's irony that I'm at Idaho National Lab when it gets blown. And it's an act of terrorism. Whoever did it, it's an act of environmental terrorism to the 10th power. It's unbelievable. You know, I talked about this when the war broke out, that this is a possible nightmare scenario. But I want to talk about this. Now listen, here's the deal. So, as you know, I'm the guy that named it the Big Z. That reservoir is so gigantic, it's one of the biggest on Earth. So, as you know, the reactors are upstream from the dam, but the canal system that brings the water to the nuclear facility. Now, people don't realize these nuclear, all they are water boilers. That's all they are. Hell of a way to boil a planet. Einstein was right. It's insanity. So, whoever blew this, now, when in Eastern Europe, and I spent a lot of my life in Eastern Europe, the narrative on Chernobyl is completely different than the American narrative. Wings, we will pretend. So, go to Russia, go to Ukraine, go to Poland, go, well, even Austria, you know, Hungary, and ask them what happened at Chernobyl. They believe a different narrative than us, human error. So, I want to talk about the water situation and go, I'm an expert. Oh boy, like I said, I named it the Big Z. So, the water that is used in these reactors. So the spent fuel pools, and there's a lot of it there. I mean, we're talking, this is very similar size set of reactors as Fukushima. The only person that ever really mentioned it right when they first invaded, and I did videos right here, USA Today headline. Reactors in Ukraine could be Fukushima style disaster. So it blows my mind that the whole world is afraid of nuclear meltdowns. They're afraid of nuclear meltdowns until they happen. And then they don't even mention, you're all worried about this one, yet you still ignore Fukushima to this day. Now, if I was to put up the videos that I put up in the early days of Fukushima, Google would have took them down for misinformation. Because everybody, they're so-called, because Google knows everything when they know jack. Remember, the so-called experts were saying, no, it's not meltdowns, Blanch, Arnie Gundershill, Caldecott, Busby, all of them, they prayed it out. Argued and said they were not meltdowns, when we factually know that Kevin Blanch was right. What is so-called conspiracy theory, which wasn't even conspiracy, they're just reality. I mean, hello. I wrote paper after paper on this university about Mach 1, Mach 2s. I knew the CORES could not handle a 7.8, let alone a 9 on the Richter. Let alone spent fuels couldn't handle 7.6 on the Richter, let alone a 9. I knew they'd lost coolant. So, stay with me. You hear all this X amount of gallons of water being used. So, they have to have continual water recycled onto these spent fuel pools. Now, there's a cycle. They say X amount of times, then they go into dry cask containers, but for the most part, they stay in spent fuel pools, but none of these reactors were ever built for because they were going to go in repositories, TikTok, Diablo Canyon. So, the amount of water that uses spent fuels it's a big amount of water, but it's nothing compared to what they use to cool the cores. Now, remember, these reactors are in shutdown. This is extremely important. These reactors are in shutdown. My guess, they'll probably never reopen again. You know, because, now stay with me. They're in shutdown. So, the circulation water that goes through the cores continually, 24/7, which is a tremendous amount of water, is a huge, tremendous amount of water. It's gigantic. Now, people have argued for years, think about the water comes out at a different temperature than it comes in. Think what it sucks in. the plankton, the microorganisms, you don't think it kills it? Boiling it? No, it kills it. So the amount of water that is typically used normally on any given day at the Big Z, what is used now is much, much less. Oh, wings, we will pretend. So, because the reactors are completely in shutdown. Now, that requires, we know, backup power. What? I thought they were there to make energy, not suck up energy. Where do they get backup power? Coal, fossil fuels. Oh, yeah. Solar, wind, natural gas, any place they can get it. I mean, these things suck up tremendous. Why? Because they have to keep the spent fuel pools cool. So how do they do that? So the circulating water that comes into the spent pool fuels is this much compared to this much on the circulation on the CORES. Now, this is an important historic video. As I had to go rogue on the university, you'd think a guy like me, I mean, expert beyond expert beyond expert, maybe the world's foremost, would be teaching in a university circle somewhere. Well, I used to here, the #1 school of business in the United States, but guys with real knowledge and real understanding, they don't want them. They blackballed them when they adopted the high school, Google tell them what they want to hear. Posturing, just like the elections. You can't even talk about any election. You can't have an opinion on these elections on the internet anymore because you're going to influence the election. What? So who's the influencer? It's unbelievable. It's disgusting. So I had to go rogue. Look, the spent fuel pools, the water that's in them is cooled through diesel generators and or backup power. They're refrigeration systems that keep the water cool and or heated in the wintertime. You can have frozen spent fuel pools. And they're styled up all over the world, including here in the United States, TikTok, Diablo Canyon Clock. I mean, that's the thing. They want to keep Diablo open, but the thing with the NRC, and I spoke to the NRC recently, they got my statements, blah, 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 blah. I deal with the NRC constantly for free. I don't get paid, yet I do all the dirty, which blows my mind. And everybody's running along. Well, go ahead, run along. I don't care. And so, I'm going to put the truth out, the narrative out, the reality out. That's what they're ignoring at Diablo Canyon. These are nuclear repositories with 40 years of spent fuel. So the amount of water that a lot of people regurgitate over the internet, they're full of shit. Because they're using the number on the coolant on the CORES. The coolant, of course, take tremendous amount, continual. And there's 7 CORES, well, at least 6. There's at least 6, but most likely 7 CORES. One of them's an experimental, blah, 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 blah. But we know there's 6, okay? We'll go with 6. Same synonym, at Fukushima. Those CORES are completely shut down. They've been in shutdown. My guess they'll never reopen the Big Z. So the canal water, no way. If this would have been breached why they weren't shut down, this would have been the biggest nuclear disaster since 2011. This would have been Fukushima. And Fukushima is the greatest ecological catastrophe in human history. Chernobyl, one graphite reactor that blew up, the 700,000 something men entombed. Now, the Big Z, it's massive. It's giant. Spent fuel is it's gigantic. So the water that it takes to cool, Grossi, I was at the IAEA when he got nominated, and I'm no fan of his. The IAEA, I protest right there. I'm at the IAEA constantly with my signs. Everybody knows me there. The lead attorneys, everybody knows me in Vienna. And, I'm there at the IAEA and the UN in Vienna protesting all the time. I go out to the IAEA harder than anyone, just like I do with the NRC, the Nuclear Iron Cheerleaders, just like up there in Idaho. By the way, I want to give you my final conclusion on my 3-day tour all over Idaho National Lab, finding out about the SMR, the little unicorn. Remember, they used to have to speak in code. Hitler blew the dams in Holland. Remember, he blew them. Act of terrorism. What if that's what this is? Whoever did it. So, when they're finding out if Hitler's got the bomb, they're behind enemy lines. They spoke in code. What did he say when he found out Hitler didn't have the bomb? Was really never even interested in it. You know, when they got to Berlin stones, there's nothing there. Baby never born, mother never pregnant. That's my conclusion at Idaho National Lab. I think they're just sucking and stealing money. I don't think they're testing shit. Nobody will talk. Nobody's seen anything. Nobody's spotted the unicorn, Bigfoot, or the Easter Bunny up there. So, the spent fuel, this is an important historical video. Nobody knows more about these than Kevin Blanch. So, the amount of water that's being regurgitated all over the internet, that's to cool cores. That's the number, and it's gigantic. They're not cooling cores right now. There's no cores to cool because they've been shut off. All these reactors are shut down. Now, they're using, why is it so panicked that the diesel fuel generators have to kick in and they get all nervous? Well, we know that the backup power has been knocked out at least 7 times. That's coming from the IAEA. Now, remember the IAEA didn't report the Fukushima 7 till at least 4 or 5 years after. Kevin Blanch was the only one that was right on that. And they only ranked it as 7. Now, think about this. The scale only goes to 7. Now, who sets a scale from 1 to 7? Think about that. So, the amount of fuel that's being regurgitated all over the internet, that's not what's being used. Water. That's not. Is this still running? I think it is. So, against the wind, I'm still running. So, the amount of water that's used on a daily basis for cooling pools is fractional compared to the continual water, the flow that has to go over CORES. Diablo Canyon. Well, all of them. That's why are nuclear reactors built next to rivers and oceans? Hell of a. That's why. So, when people regurgitate this number, so do they have water source to get to the cool pools? Yes. Now, if this would have happened while these reactors were functional and not in shutdown, all 6, this would have been Fukushima. Not the greatest nuclear disaster in history. It would have matched the greatest nuclear disaster in history, the greatest eagle, Fukushima. You're all afraid of nuclear disasters. Everyone's afraid of a nuclear disaster. They're afraid until it happened. 1 partial core at Chernobyl. And again, you go to that part of the world on Chernobyl, so who blew the dam? Who blew the dam? I have my theories. I mean, I have a really good educated theories on who blew the dam. And by the way, there's new information coming out of the accident that happened at Hanford that the NRC just fined them. So they didn't test the workers properly. Of course they didn't. Come out after the fact, after. You don't think I have any skin in this game? 2011, I went to the bone marrow transplant on 11/11/11, given 2 months to live. I just came from that. That's why I had to come home from Idaho. Because I had so many doctors, you know, what I've been dealing with. Given 2 months to live. Went to the bone marrow on 11/11/11. I cannot believe the whole world is afraid of nuclear meltdown until they happened. Never happened at Mayak. Never happened to Santa Susana. Never even happened at 3 Mile Island. Maybe we can wait 44 years for Netflix to do a documentary on Fukushima in the year 2525. Man is still alive. So the amount of water that flows onto these reactors if this scenario would have happened when these reactors were on, we would have had Fukushima. And you want to just go along that, it blows my mind. Afraid of nuclear disasters, nuclear until they happened at Fukushima. Full core meltdowns, 3, just Kevin Blanch was right. If I had to put those videos up in this day and age that I put up in 2011, Google would have took them down for misinformation. Because, you know, because all the so-called experts, well, Google doesn't know their ass. They don't know shit. You know, like I said, you go to that part of the world and you have a conversation in Russia, in Ukraine, in Poland, even Austria, in Vienna, on what happened at Chernobyl. And they have a whole different take on it than the U.S. take. And if you don't think the U.S. and CIA, KGB are capable of anything, you don't know nothing about the Cold War, which never ended, in this proxy war. This war's gotten dirty. Well, you go clear back to that great book that Anna wrote, Putin's Dirty War. When did she write that? I think 2006. Was that when Putin murdered her? You know, she's from Brooklyn. You know, sugar wars, molasses wars, textile wars, cocaine cowboys, as Kevin Blanch called this, plutonium wars. So, let's get down here by the water. Flip our soup can. So, hell of a way to boil water, Albert Einstein said. Kevin Blanch. Hell of a way to boil a planet. So, do they use water to cool the pools? Yes. But that's what the backup diesel generators, the backup power. They use refrigeration and heating systems to keep the pools cool, which takes external power. So, what? Dirty diesel. That's what it's running on. Running on dirty diesel. Backup diesel generators. Because the power keeps getting knocked out. So, I agree with what Zelensky said. He said that, I don't know, he keeps texting me. I think that's where that is going. He said it was an act of terrorism. It's exactly what it is. I used to teach at that school when it was the #1 school business in the country. I was the guy. You can look it up. Under investigation by the FBI for Chinese influence, and now we're dead last. Now, how could that happen? Look it up. Look it up. When I was the guy there. You know, and so the expert on this, oh boy, I did the due diligence. I did all the environmental work, you know, the accounting work, the financial work on these nuclear reactors. And of course they blackballed me. I mean, they overtook it. Why? Because they don't want anybody to know what they're up to. Plutonium wars, I own that domain. So, long video, important video, historic video. So, when these people are regurgitating a number, that's why when the cores are active. The cores are not active. They're not active. They've been in shutdown for some time. They're using external power sources. Now, the risk, we lose power to the diesel. Oh boy, can you imagine? Then it's on. It's over. Then you got Fukushima. So, who blew that down? I have my theories. And it's evil. It's really evil. What happened in Chernobyl? Nightmare. Whoever did that, was that man-made air? Building nuclear reactors. It's evil. It's sick, actually. So, let's flip your soup can. I see the June gloom started in May in San Diego. I've been sick, as you know. Open heart surgery this winter for the second time. So, when I hear people regurgitating this narrative on the cooling pools, they use a fraction of the water for cooling pools. Now, there's canal system. This canal system's gone. This is one of the biggest reservoirs on Earth. It's as big as the Great Salt Lake, that lake that it's created. This is a nightmare. It's an environment. I mean, it's when Hitler blew the dikes in Holland. That's what it is. You know, this war goes on and on and on. I was over there in 2015 and 17, I believe, in Ukraine. And I mean, it was going then. It was a nightmare then. I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on and on. Why? Well, the military industrialized war complex. They don't illuminate, they radiate. So, this is a nightmare, but I cannot overstate this. The number a lot of people regurgitate, that is water that continually pours over cores. There's no water going over those cores right now because they've been in shutdown for a year. All of them. But the spent fuel pools have to be kept cool. They use water? Yeah. They have to recycle the water? Yeah. But they use cooling systems. That's what the backup diesel generators are for. That's what the external power. So you think about it, if this doesn't wake you up to nuclear energy, what is going to wake you up? Fukushima didn't. So what's going to wake you up? I don't know what wakes this people up. When you have full blown out meltdowns, gesturing moves left to right, and it doesn't wake you people up, what does wake you up? You know, and so you're afraid of nuclear meltdowns. You're afraid of nuclear meltdowns. You're afraid of nuclear meltdowns. Until they happen. You know, you're all Big Z going crazy over this, yeah, which it's a nightmare. What about Fukushima? Oh, it happened. They're full core meltdowns pushed into the Pacific. And you think there's no byproduct for that? I used to say in my class right here, before they blackballed me. Become the worst. Look them up, under investigation by the FBI. If you think there's no byproduct from full blown out nuclear meltdowns, something's the matter with your brain. The greatest event in human history, the meltdowns of Fukushima, Japan. Why are we afraid of nuclear meltdowns they happen? Why do we spend all this money until they happen? And then we just see no nuclear energy evil, speak no nuclear energy, hear no it, smell it, we just ignore it. Again, right here. I did that video right as Putin, Putin loves Tuesdays on 2. Headline, USA Today. They panicked and they used the F word. Me. Headline, USA Today. February last year. Nuclear reactor. I'm the guy that named it the Big Z. In Ukraine could become Fukushima style disaster. You all act like you don't know. So, whoever blew that freaking dam is evil. And I have my theories. And I'm not going to say it here because you guys are all knocking. Start tagging, oh, blanch, it's this. Pathetic, you know, pathetic. The American sheep, you know. So, stay tuned. Important video. So the number there, all these fear porners are putting out there, and this is a catastrophe. Do not kid yourself. It's a catastrophe. My guess, I don't think these reactors will ever reopen now. So you're talking Fukushima and the Big Z offline because they have no water source now. Will they rebuild the dam? I don't know if the war ever ends, but the way this is looking, this is turning into Afghanistan and Iraq. This goes on and on and on and on. So, the CORES are inactive. Spent fuel pools, use external power. That's your fear. To lose the external power source at this point. You lose that diesel backup generator, oh, you're going to have Fukushima. So, important video. Stay tuned.